Mr Shearer, do you think that Smith should resign in the way of sending a personal reference on this very letter yet?
I think it was a very unwise thing for him to do. We don't have all of the facts yet, and I would want to see all of the facts. But what I do know is that he made an accusation on radio this morning saying he'd done nothing wrong, and now he's apologising to the Prime Minister. Clearly there was something wrong there. I want a full inquiry. I think that the public deserves a full inquiry, and we need to make sure that we get to the bottom of this.
Do you think he should have offered his resignation, though?
I think I need to know all the facts first before I could make that determination. I don't think we've got all the facts. I want a full inquiry, and I think the Prime Minister should give that to New Zealand.
Is it right for a minister to...
Do you think that these actions were by Mr.
This is highly inappropriate. I mean, he is a minister and responsible for ACC, writing on behalf of a friend of his to his own ministry, supporting her claim. I mean, this is completely wrong on the face of it. But I'd like to see more of the details before we call for Nick Smith's resignation.
On those facts alone, though, don't you think that that's enough to offer a resignation?
I think it was incredibly unwise, incredibly stupid, and it was also unwise for him to defend it, to say that this was somehow defensible, given the fact that he has clearly stepped over a line in terms of a conflict of interest.
What details are we missing at the moment, Mr Shearer?
Well, I think we need to see a lot more of what actually happened, but I haven't seen the letters yet. I'd like to see all that. I think the Prime Minister should explain exactly what's happened here. One of his chief ministers has clearly had a conflict of interest, and he needs to front up with that.
Isn't it quite simple, though, that here's a minister that was the ACC minister writing a letter on behalf of somebody that was battling ACC? Surely you don't need any more facts than that.
I want to see exactly what happened before I make the determination.
Well, what do you mean exactly?
I want to know exactly what happened. I would want to hear from John Key and Nick Smith a full explanation to both myself but also to the New Zealand public about how a minister could get himself into the situation, and I want to know exactly what the background is. I'd also want to see an inquiry into how 6,000 names get out to the public, which can obviously compromise their privacy, given the fact that they didn't obviously consent for that to happen.
It is quite clear what's happened though. He sent a personal reference to medical assessors saying that she was a person of high regard before she had an accident. That's what's happened. He's done it on ministerial letterhead.
Yes, well, I want to see the Prime Minister explain exactly what the circumstances were, and I would like him to show some leadership in terms of where he thinks this should be going from right now. But I would like to know all the facts myself before I ask for a resignation.
Well, he simply accepted his apology. He said that clearly that's enough for him. Is it enough?
Well, I think we need to know exactly what happened. The public needs to know exactly what's happened. I think we need a full explanation. I want to know the full details of what actually happened with this person.
You can ask those questions this afternoon in the House, can't you?
Absolutely, yes.
Does it look to you like Bronwyn Puller was using her National Party mates to try and get ahead with ACC?
Well, this is exactly what I would like to sort of see, the full background of what's actually happened, because quite clearly she was obviously using Michelle Bogue as a former National Party president. She was using Nick Smith, and she was also, from what I understand, but again I've only got this from other sources, that she was using her position to try and bargain a better deal for herself. I want to know what's behind this entire episode. It certainly has caught Nick Smith off guard, and he's done something incredibly foolish and stupid, but I want to see the full background first.
If you were the Prime Minister and this was one of your ministers, what would you do?
Well, I'd want to see the complete background to what's happening first before I made a decision. Right now, I don't have all of those details.
But how would the full background in terms of, it's clear Nick Smith wrote a reference. He was ACC minister. He did it on letterhead for this woman. What difference?
If it was as simple as that, and it was my minister, he would step down. But I want to know the full background before I made that decision.
So a hell of a coincidence, isn't it, that this information, 6,700 names and indications of the type of case, went to a woman who is battling ACC, who has all these connections. That's a hell of a coincidence, isn't it?
Well, what I'm saying here is I actually think there's more to this case than what we're seeing, and I'm wanting a full inquiry. I think there's a lot of answers that are yet to come out, and I want the Prime Minister to be open with the public of New Zealand and explain what exactly has gone on.
So you say you smell a rat?
I think there's a lot more to come out than what we're seeing at the moment.
Nick Smith said he received dozens and dozens of emails from Rowan Puller before he wrote this letter of reference. Has he bowed to pressure, do you think?
Look, I think he was incredibly foolish to write a letter on letterhead, ACC letterhead, to his own ministry defending her case. That is a clear conflict of interest, and Nick Smith's been around long enough to realise exactly what it is.
What do you make of the government's local government reforms, and particularly the definition of, forcing onto councils what the definition of the public good is? Do you think they're trying to get councils essentially to, do their dirty work?
Well, on the one hand, obviously we want councils to be fiscally responsible, and so there's parts of what we've heard that we would support that. But what I'm confused about with Nick Smith is on the one hand he's saying, for example, that some of the social things that he's talking about are out in terms of his narrower definition. But yet he's saying social housing's fine, the Volvo around the world race is fine, fireworks displays are fine. He's in fact defining as he's going in an ad hoc way what's in and what's out, and it's completely different from what the legislation that enabled the super city to get up and running just 18 months ago is actually saying as well.
Do you accept Dr. Smith's contention that the increase in council debt and rates is a direct result of the changes to local government legislation that occurred under the previous Labour coalition government?
I don't accept that completely. There was obviously some increase in rates that have come about from the councils doing other things, but councils have also had other impositions put on top of them. Water quality, for example, some of the building regulations have been pushed on them from central government. So it's quite a more complicated story than what we're seeing from Nick Smith.
So do you accept it was partially down to those changes in legislation back in 2002?
I think that the councils themselves have made decisions which are appropriate for the councils, and every council is obviously accountable to their own ratepayers, and their ratepayers actually vote them in. This is also about local democracy. The ratepayers have the chance to get rid of councillors and mayors if they don't think they're pulling their weight, or if they think that their rates are going up too quickly.
So you think that the government is getting in front of the ratepayer council relationship here?
I think what could happen here is that government legislates to amalgamate or to push impositions onto local councils which are inappropriate for local councils. I would like to see the local democracy actually be something that we're proud of in New Zealand, and not have a minister decide whether they do this or that or something else according to his whim.
In your view, what activities should local government not be involved in?
Well, I haven't gone through the entire spectrum of what I don't think or should be in. But all I'm saying is that we have a minister at the moment who, when he's asked about something being in or out, seems to make a decision off the top of his head. I mean, I think I would want to see the legislation, and I would want to see the legislation set out exactly what it is that should be, and it should be before we make the determination.
Well, can I ask you some of the issues that Dr. Smith specifically referred to? Buying farms, NCEA standards, environment standards, fireworks displays.
Well, fireworks displays, he says, is in.
So you think they're in for you as well?
Well, I think this is up for local councils to make these decisions. If they think a fireworks display, Auckland City hosted the Volvo around the yacht race last weekend, should that be out? Well, I would have thought that Len Brown could actually make that decision without central government having to step in and tell them what to do.
So do you think this smacks of central government knowing best?
Absolutely, it certainly smacks of Nick Smith deciding what he thinks should be in and what he should be out. He's rattling off lists every time he's been asked about one thing. He said one thing or the other. I actually think that the Auckland plan, for example, that came out of the super city legislation, the spatial plan, that seems to be out the window now. Yet just a few months ago we had John Key and everybody else saying we needed a spatial plan from Auckland City. There is contradictory information going out, and I think that the government needs to clarify that before it goes any further into legislation.
Do you think councils should bail out broke rugby unions?
Well, again, that's the decision for the council to make, and if the ratepayers don't like it, they'll vote the council out. So again, we come back to local democracy being alive and well in New Zealand.
It doesn't seem as if you want to put many restrictions, if any, on councils then in that case.
Well, I'm not
leave it up to them to do.
I'm not the minister. What I'm saying is that we should have fiscal responsibility, but at the same time, I think we also need to make sure that local councils have the ability to do what's appropriate for their own communities. And I guess that for them, deciding what's in and what's out is they should be largely the determinant of that. But obviously, they need to do that within fiscal restraints.
Just one last thing. What about John Key's speech to the Public Service Association in 2008, where he talked about state asset sales not being able to make the boat go faster? What do you make of his comments in light of where he's at now?
Well, I agreed with him. I mean, I think what he said back in 2008 is exactly the position that we're taking right now. I mean, he said they were very, very efficiently run state-owned enterprises. I agree with him. Selling them won't make the boat go faster. I completely agree with him. The problem I have is right now we're doing exactly the opposite to what he said in 2008.
He's now saying that the mixed ownership model is different, that can make the boat go faster. What do you make of that explanation?
Well, I think most experts would actually say that the mixed ownership model is exactly what it sounds like, mixed. It's all over the place and nobody quite knows what sort of price we're going to get for it for a start, what returns we will lose from it. It is a complete shambles.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.